Welcome inside the paint on the biggest game day of the year for the Miami Heat. Ira Woodman
And Clay, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second for breaking news. I get a call this morning from Brent Musburger's gambling outlet out in Vegas, Vizin or whatever it's called out there. They want me on the show. And I say I can't because I have the Slomin's Home Security Inside the Paint show, and you got to have your priorities. And then they go to me, well, what about all these Heat rumors of COVID? And I'm like, what Heat rumors of COVID? I hate sleeping this time of year because I'm always worried I'm going to miss something. My wife always goes to me, you should shut off your phone in case you get butt dialed by Clay after a Sunday night show. And I'm like,
Which
no.
did happen.
And I'm like, no, something might happen.
Fact.
And so I went to Twitter, and there were all these rumors out there that 2 Heat players did not travel back from Philadelphia. And I'm like, that makes no sense because they're not on the injury report. And if nothing else, the NBA would at least address that. So I made some calls and woke up some people way too early in the morning. Folks, it's not a case of 2 Heat players did not travel back with the team. Every player traveled back. 2 Heat staffers did not travel back. Jose Pineda, the Spanish play-by-play voice, the Heat released that the other day, and also a team therapist who either tested positive or showed signs, he did not travel back. So yes, 2 members of the Heat traveling party did not travel back, but all players were in Philly, are now back in Miami, and as of now, we're clear to play. And these are the signs of the times. And to go a little deeper into this, basically the NBA has told everyone, don't test. Let's just get through the season. Let's just get through the season. We'll deal with everything. We'll put everyone in quarantine if we have to later. So that's where it stands. But it just shows you, as we get closer to the league's signature moment, the NBA Finals, we're still part of this cycle. In this series, we saw Al Horford test out the first game, couldn't play. Miraculously, 48 hours, he's back on the court. So for those seeing the rumors on Twitter this morning for the first time, the Heat are not losing players due to COVID, but yes, there is concern. Now back to our regularly scheduled Slomin's Home Security Inside the Paint. Clay Ferraro.
And to be clear, when you say concern, the Heat there are kind of ramped up protocols a little bit. They're, and completely understand why, but we in the media, they're trying to make sure that if we're anywhere near players, you're masked, you're vaxxed, you're boosted, all of that. So there is a level of
oh yeah, we're getting yelled at. We were crowding PJ Tucker the other day, and Tim Donovan, who could be forceful when needed, he was basically like, get back. So like you understand where they are. And again, all media have to be vaccinated and boosted to be what they call tier 1, to be with the players that shoot around, to be able to talk to them directly when there's interaction pregame and things like that. There is distancing postgame, players on a podium, media is seated further back. So there's a distance level there. They are trying to avoid people approaching the players. But you know what, Clay? It's not like players can't go to a supermarket. It's not like players can't be out in public, or pick up a family member at the airport. And they are dissuading that. They're basically almost begging all players, please, just stay away. You have maybe 2 more weeks, 2.5 more weeks. Let's just get through this. And you know what? If we have to report that Bam Adebayo is in protocols on July 3rd, we'll gladly do that. But let's make it to the finish line there. That's where we are. The Heat 6 victories from an NBA championship.
So I'm going to switch it up a little bit because you mentioned the injuries in the crosstalk. I was going to start about just this series as a whole. It's the strangest series I've ever seen. So we're going to get to that coming up in just a little bit. But I want to go back to the injuries because I do think it maybe from the inside, it is a bigger deal even than is being projected on the outside. So let us know what you're hearing. Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, and even on down to guys like Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker.
Yeah, Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, I'm not going to understate. Ramona Shelburne of ESPN reported yesterday that Tyler has the kind of groin injury that would require typically 2 to 4 weeks to get better. And we know that. That's what a groin injury is. That's the kind of thing you're most sensitive when it's coming to a tear or something like that. The thought now is, and this sounds terrible, but if he tears it, who cares? He'll have 4 months to heal it. And I think Tyler almost feels the same way. But Clay, you can say that. And you can say you're going to try. But at that moment of truth, when you can drive Tyler those running long bank shot layup floaters, if you don't feel right at the moment, you shoot the pull-up instead. He's struggling in this series, and we're seeing that right away. So this might not be something that was in the moment that kept him out of last game, but might have even been before that. I don't see how he can be a factor in the balance of the series. The good news is there. We'll get to this later in the show. Victor Oladipo stepped up, you have a reliable or at least feasible option in that regard. I think the Jimmy Butler issue is real. I don't think he has his explosion. He can't get around players. He can't put them on his shoulder or his hip to draw those fouls. They simply can stay step for step with him. So you're talking a guy, what was it, 18 free throws, 16 free throws in the opener of the series, 2 free throws in the game when he missed half the game, 0 free throws last game. You know, it's interesting. You read the Zach Lowe article he posted on ESPN today. We've seen tons of analysis. ESPN has hours of shows. To me, it's as simple as this. If Jimmy Butler can't get to the free throw line, the Heat can't win this series. It's just that simple. So it's almost like if you're going to put a parlay on the Heat winning the series, take the over on the Jimmy free throws. Because to me, those goes more in hand as any Heat winning stat than I think anything else in this series.
Yeah, and I do want to address the officiating here because I think when you go back and you watch a couple of these games that happened in Boston, there were plays where Jimmy Butler was fouled and they were not called, and he should have gone to the free throw line. Now, he does not have the level of explosiveness, clearly, and you could see it when you go back, especially first half of Game 3. It's not there. It is frustrating, Ira, when you have Stephen A. Smith, before that game even starts, screaming to the world, let's call it what it is. Boston's getting all the calls tonight. And I think Michael Wilbon said they're going to get all the calls they didn't get in Game 3. They got all the calls in Game 3 as well. It's getting absurd. And there was I need to go back and see who posted because I want to give him credit. This is not because the Heat aren't taking the ball into the paint. And this is John Jablanca on Twitter. The Heat are taking the ball into the paint. Yet they still shot, 40 fewer free throws?
Yeah, it was like 68-28 or something like that. Yeah, he'd have had 14 free throws each of the last 2 games. The Celtics have been 30-plus, even the game they lost, correct.
I do think, and you asked the question, by the way, and credit to you, because Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler were up there, and you asked the question about the free throw shooting, and you intentionally did not go the officiating route. Yet the reaction from Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, I thought, was telling. And this is just me. I felt like the Heat in Game 4 thought they were going to get Scott fostered. And I think the entire world felt like they were going to get Scott fostered. And I think that's part of what was playing with Steven. And this isn't just Scott Foster. The officiating was bad in Game 3 as well. And the officiating was not a reason why they lost Game 4. I do think it's a reason why Game 3 was a lot closer than it should have been. It's not the reason why they lost Game 4. But Ira, you're right. They're not going to win this series if Jimmy Butler can't get to the free throw line. And if he's clearly worse than is being led on, then that lack of explosiveness is going to be a problem, and it's going to cost them the series. At the same time, can we get some sort of equity here? It's getting absurd to watch from a distance. It's even worse when you know people on the inside who are doing this game nationally for ABC and ESPN can just blatantly say it, and everybody's cool with it because they know it's coming. And I don't know if it's because they want Boston in the finals and not Miami. I don't know what it is, but it has to be equitable. It's getting ridiculous, Ira, and there's my rant for it. I'm with you. I do think the health is a major issue here. I didn't plan on going on an officiating rant this morning. It just kind of happened. But I do think when it impacts a series as much as it has so far, and you're seeing it play out the way that I think a lot of people were fearing that it would, it has to change in these last 3 games. And I do think it's going to impact these last 3 games.
You know, the coaching narrative always feeds into this. And so after every game, the Celtics subtly will say, well, if they're going to play bully ball, if they're going to be physical, if they're going to shove us around, we have to push back. But just like I said it, so they say 3 words about the Heat harshly. They're going to shove us. If they're going to bully us, if they're going to turn this into war, we have to do more. So it's like they're going 3 for 1 in getting the narrative out there. And it's always been this way. It's been this way with Pat Riley coaching against the Celtics. It's been the way with Kevin McHale and Kurt Rambis clotheslining and the diatribes after it. Heat Knicks, we heard that. One Heat part owner wanted to go to court over officiating and things like that. You hear things like that all the time. So to me, it's a case of you have to tune it out a little anyway and not sort of foster it where it's in your head. So this is where I get jealous of Clay Ferraro.
Foster.
Okay, and that was unintentional. So this is where I'm jealous of Clay being part of a visual medium at Local 10. So I asked that question to Jimmy Butler and to Kyle Lowry. They're sitting there together on the podium. Jimmy answers it. Kyle just leans back. I ask about the officiating. He's like, well, there's no way for me in words to type exactly what he said because he said nothing, or to paint sort of the moment. But you could see it, that Kyle realized you get fined for this. It does you no good after the fact, but damn, it was freaking frustrating out there. So since we probably don't have the video, and Sean, I'm not going to make you try to get in real quick, Kyle was just like, and just leaned back in his chair as if to sort of send the message of, what do you want me to do? What can I say? What's going to make a difference? Now, the other comment you remember was Victor Oladipo, and he was very honest about it. He says, we have to make the referees notice. So
we have to sell it better. We have to sell it better.
Sell it better, which is a terrible phrase. You shouldn't have to sell a foul. And also, when you hear the word sell it, I always go back to soccer. How they don't sell it. They cringe as if they've been shot out there. So to me, that's the total difference. I hope it doesn't become, Clay Ferraro, the point where you have to start selling fouls. I hope it can be a point in this best 2 out of 3 Heat Celtics series now where a foul is a foul, a non-foul isn't a non-foul, and we all understand, like players miss free throws, like players commit turnovers, there will be some missed calls. Usually a coach after a game, if his team is in single-digit turnovers, he'll be fine with that, right, Clay? If the Heat only have 9 turnovers tonight, you're fine with it, right?
Of course.
If the Celtics only have 9 turnovers, Celtics Nation is fine with that. So there will be officiating mistakes, but preferably not 68-28 to that degree also. That's where it gets a little bit obscene, unless you're telling me one team is uber passive and the other team is uber aggressive. And I swear I've seen two teams play almost the exact same style of ball to this point.
Yeah, well, okay, and I think you hit on the nail on the head. This is what I wanted to get to with some of these numbers, and I should have sent this to Sean, so I apologize. But when you look at per game in this series, the Celtics are shooting 25 shots per game inside 5 feet. The Heat are shooting 23. So it's difference of only 2 per game. Free throws per game. I'm not going to go through all that, but if you check me out on Twitter at ClayWPLG, I retweeted it. It's all there. The point you made about both of these teams playing similar games, it's not like one team is driving to the basket and the other one is just settling. That's not how this is going. The thing that was really frustrating, if you go back to Game 3, there was a moment, I think it was 2 consecutive possessions, where Gabe Vincent lifted his arm a little bit, and it was not a push-off. But it was called a push-off because Daniel Tice went flying backwards. Didn't even fall down. Right. Just flew backwards. Other end of the floor, Jaylen Brown does the same thing. And I can't remember who it was that fell down, but it was clear, and they didn't call it. So I don't care if you're going to call it one way or the other. Call it equitable on both sides. And that's what's frustrating. And Ira, I will say this and I'm not just going to do this because you're my boy and I appreciate you, but I am going to air that tonight. I mean, I've already put together my piece for tonight on our 5 o'clock newscast where you asked the question of Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler, and their reaction is Kyle leans back and like kind of puts his head down, and Jimmy like looks at him and laughs and says, I didn't say anything of the sort about the officiating. It's bad. It's got to change. The good news so far, and we're going to move on to other topics, the good news so far is it has not cost Miami or Boston, for that matter, a game. The Heat would have won Game 1 regardless.
Good.
Boston would have won.
Thank you for adding that addendum, and that's important because no matter what comes out of it, at least through 4 games, the officiating has not decided the series. It has impacted the series, and those are 2 very important different words. We have seen moments in games and series where you can say the officiating decided the series. We're not at that point yet. These teams are incredibly evenly matched. These teams play an incredibly equitable defensive style in their approach. These teams play hard and try hard. These teams are very uneven. These teams' greatest offensive stars can have absolute clunkers. Jaylen Brown has had clunkers in the series. Jimmy Butler has had clunkers in the series. And that's the difference. The Warriors out west are getting much more consistent top-tier play throughout the series. Last night's game being the lone outlier. That's why they look so much better than either of the teams in the East. This is not, Eric Spoelstra goes, this isn't Heat Knicks circa late 1990s. No, not for the physicality or violence, but for the grit, it really is. It can be hard to watch at times, Clay.
Yeah, and I think part of this, as we get into the weirdest series ever topic, is that I because it's so physical, I feel like it psychologically takes so much out of each team to win a game. And I do feel like there's a little bit of a psychological letdown in the next game. And I think we saw that to this point. I think that changes now moving forward. I think
Yeah,
you've kind of
because
gotten
now it's almost like the stakes are doubled because now you can't
Yes.
say
Yes.
so the Celtics can just exhale. No, once you're down 3-2, once you get to the brink of elimination, it's the toughest time in any part of the series. So this is different. These 3 games right now, it's not about home court. It's not about officiating. It's about being your best of the entire season. And this is the brutal reality of the NBA. Mark Cuban addressed this when he spoke about the play-in tournament and the scheduling for the playoffs and how the season goes so long. The Heat right now, let's see, I think it was 5 exhibition games, takes you at 87. First round against Atlanta, 5 games, takes you to, my math's really good, 92. 6 games against the Sixers in the second round, takes you to 98. 4 games so far here. You're 102 games into the season. You should not be 102 games into the season in your most important moment of the season. The schedule is too long. The playoffs have proven too grueling. So what we're seeing is playoffs of attrition, and that sucks. Because I'm going to put it this way. Clay Ferraro, local 10. Do you believe the Miami Heat we're seeing right now is the best version of the Miami Heat?
No.
Do you think the Boston Celtics we're seeing right now, compared to what they did over the second half of the season, is the best version of the Boston Celtics?
No.
That's a shame. That's just a shame. There's a reason European soccer doesn't have playoffs. The entire season means as much. You have your table, you have your relegation, you have your teams who move up because they value every game. In the EPL, game 1 is as important as the game played on May 22nd. That's not the case in the NBA. Mark Cuban came out yesterday and said, what the play-in round has done is given us a great week of basketball, but it's compacted the rest of the season. Clay, you remember these breaks, these 2-3 day breaks during the playoffs. We would complain in the media because you'd have to fill it. You would features me with stories. But on the other hand, the Heat didn't practice yesterday and did not hold a shoot around right now. Clay Ferraro is not getting ready to boom and hustle down to FTX Arena. There is no shoot around right now. Think about that, folks. The Miami Heat walked off the court at 11:15 p.m. on Monday. Didn't practice at all on Tuesday and will not even have a walkthrough until about 5:15 tonight at FTX Arena. Teams are exhausted. So they're even trading in preparation for recovery time. That's the problem with this also. I'd rather see the best of these teams. We sure as hell, you mentioned it, Clay, Zach Lowe mentioned it. We're just not right now. It's stuck in the mud, and you're right.
Yeah, and I do think the series would be in the mud regardless with these two teams because of how they play. But you would at least have like those moments where you see the stars being the stars. And again, Jimmy was that in game 1. And I don't think the Peyton Pritchard play, I don't think that caused it with Jimmy Butler. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a doctor. It looked bad, but I don't think that's why we're here. I do think it's the constant pounding that they have to go through over and over again. And you're exactly
and
right.
especially in a series like this versus, sort of a softer style still in the Western Conference, you get through that better. Yes.
So we got a lot more to get to as the show goes on. Please, and thank you for hitting the like button so far. 305 Tommie, never going to happen. Never changing the background. It's simply not going to happen. As bad as it looks. I do want to get more. I do want to get more into the injury situation because I want to see what the Heat can do when it comes to adjustments, if anything, to try to make up for this. And also, we're going to talk about the big one tonight. We're going to get Ira Winderman's prediction for this game. Or maybe we're not. That look on his face, he's not willing. That and a lot more coming up here on Inside the Paint.